Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast. My name is Ryan.
I'm Amanda and we're your hosts. And today we're talking about travel as a form of escapism.
So what does that mean, escapism? What's with the big isms?
The big isms. It's one of the big isms of life, really.
Four big isms. What are the other isms?
Those are for a different episode. I can't give those away right now.
Okay.
Escapism is sort of this idea of not being present in your life, I guess, not actively being aware of the things you're feeling or that are going on with you. So that's how I define it, escapism. Like, one of the ways that I engage in escapism when I'm not traveling is TV. So it's this way of sort of getting lost in something else. I mean, even reading does it to a certain extent in a fictional novel where you're kind of lost in somebody else's world and you can kind of forget about who you are, what you're doing, your life situation, the problems that you're dealing with, et cetera, et cetera. Is that how you define it as well, or?
I think that's pretty good.
Thanks, Oxford Dictionary.
Escapism. Yeah, just like, I think of it when you're thinking of entertainment, and you can have entertainment that's enriching, that kind of contributes to your life, or you can have entertainment that just kind of helps you escape life and you forget. It's like something you're doing to kind of forget reality and your day-to-day life. So
yeah, and I think that there's a lot of different forms of escapism. Like, I think that you could definitely argue that, a fictional novel like The Hunger Games or Harry Potter is captivating enough to be a form of escapism because you're really in that world for a little while. TV, for sure. I think that shopping to a certain extent is a form of escapism. Sports, definitely drinking alcohol. I think people can even use like food, gym, travel, which is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and the genesis for talking about travel and as an escape kind of comes from an idea of using travel to just run away from your problems instead of actually solving problems.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I know in my personal life, I think that's something that, people have shared their opinions, like, you're just traveling to run away from the stuff you don't want to deal with. And I think that there is some truth behind that. I think
so. Is there like an example or something?
Yeah, definitely. I think like the first time we went traveling, sort of like the purpose of traveling was like, oh, okay, we've graduated university and the expectation now is to go out and get a job. And like, I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to travel. I'm going to travel instead of doing this job. I'm going to delay this inevitable unhappiness that's going to come to me by going out and having this really fun trip first. So I feel like in that way, it was definitely a form of escapism.
And while we were traveling, I think we were both really focused on just the trip, trying to ignore what came afterwards,
Yeah, definitely.
Like, relate to that.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of remember at different times things sort of coming up about the future. Like, I remember having a conversation with you somewhere on the coast in Vietnam. I was like, we should, probably start thinking about if we're going to move in together. And it was kind of like, oh, I don't know. Like, we don't need to talk about this right now.
Yeah, I don't want to think about life after this trip.
Yeah, and I remember even getting emails from like friends, family, it's like, what's next? What's next for you? And I'm like, I don't know, like, stop reminding me that there's a next. Like, I just want to like not think about that right now. And people, obviously that's a question when you're traveling to and you meet other travelers, and the closer we got to going home, it's, oh, you're going home. Like, what are you going to do when you get back? And it's like, I don't know. Like, don't ask me these things. I don't want to think about that. And then, I mean, the interesting thing about that is that as much as you can push it out of your mind, at some point you have to face it. And it just feels easier to like push it out of your mind until you actually have to deal with it, I guess. It feels easier in that moment, which is kind of interesting.
And would you say that the second time we went traveling, after finishing our first 6-month trip, coming back, getting jobs, working for 2 years, that a lot of the motivation for going was kind of an escape.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the first year that I worked in corporate Calgary, I was happier than the second year. I think there was a changeover in staff, and it was just not a good situation for me anymore where I was working, and I just felt really, really bogged down. And I think, like, you know, you were very unhappy, and I think it was getting to a place where it was just like kind of not enjoyable. Like, I feel like life was just kind of dragging on, and it wasn't something that I was enjoying doing. And it was like, I just need to get away from this. I need to just get away from it all. And there was also all these things that I'd written down in my journal from traveling in 2011 that I wanted to apply to my life, which I kind of forgot about until I looked back.
So these were things that while we were traveling, you were like, when I get home and start working, this is stuff I want to be doing. Yeah.
It was like a list of like traits or qualities or things that I wanted to, like, ways to live my life. Like I don't want to work a job if I'm unhappy. Yet it's like, you know, I was unhappy like after a year in my job, and I stayed there because it looks better on your resume to have it for 2 years. And I didn't want to get another job and then be stuck longer in the city. So it seemed easier to just kind of like push through. And I feel like I was getting to a point where I was spending money on things that I didn't want to spend money on anymore. I was like going out way more than I wanted to. I was way too busy, just so busy all the time. And I was having a really hard time saying no to friends. I was feeling a lot of like FOMO, so like fear of missing out. So if my friends were doing something, I like couldn't really handle the idea of them doing it without me, which was, I would have these like internal battles. I feel like you probably remember, because I feel like I was like really stressed out about it, where I'd be like, oh, like they're doing this, but I don't really want to go, but I'm going to go because I don't want to like not go, but I don't want to go. And it's like, just don't go if you don't want to go. But it was just this thing that I was really struggling with at that point. So I think that South America for me was a lot about needing to get away, like feeling like I needed to get away. What about you? Is that sort of a relatable feeling for you?
So at the time, I was dealing with a back injury, and I was really like quite afraid of, for like my health, that I was feeling quite stressed about it. I'm in the lead up to like making the decision, booking flights, and then quitting the job. It was, I felt kind of just like trapped, and I didn't necessarily think that traveling was the solution. Once we kind of committed to it, it seemed a lot better, but I was really nervous about my health, about my future career prospects, quitting a job that was really like the first like kind of corporate job I had. And then so you really wanted to go traveling.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, I don't know, life just felt like overwhelming. I didn't know what to do. And I think I went along with it. And then as we did start to get traveling, I started to feel like, oh, I am actually like not as unhealthy as I thought I was, and go through that and start feeling better. But it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm going to escape and get out of here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's sort of an unconscious thing. I just sort of want to, if you're comfortable talking a little bit more sort of about like your health situation, I just feel like we could really like paint the picture for listeners as to like what it was like. Like you got a back neck injury doing mixed martial arts that may have been previously from like another injury that you had, but you like weren't sleeping well. You were taking a ton of painkillers. You were going to chiro and physio and massage almost every single day.
Or like not every single, but like a few times a week.
Yeah, a couple times a week at least. And I remember I'd wake up in the morning and you'd be lying on a yoga mat in the dark in our living room. And then you get up and kind of go about your day in like a very sort of like, I mean, it was very somber because you couldn't move a lot and you were moving your shoulders instead of your actual head. And I remember coming home from work and you'd be lying on the yoga mat again. And it's kind of what you did like all night. Like you just like couldn't really exercise. Watching TV was really painful. Like reading hurt your neck. Like there was a lot of things that you couldn't do in that time. And I remember feeling like, I don't know, like it was very like defeating to watch you be like that, because I felt like I couldn't do anything and I wasn't sure how to help you. And it's kind of interesting because we're recording this podcast on my birthday. And I remember my birthday in 2013, you gave me a guidebook to South America.
Was it 2013?
Yeah, because we were in South America for my birthday in 2014. You gave me a guidebook to South America, and it's like the best birthday present I've ever received, I think, ever, because I'd been like pushing for this trip, and I was like, I think we need to go again. Like, I feel like that's what we should do, and that's what I really want to do. And I didn't think that I could go for 6 months without you. That's a long time to be apart from somebody that you're with. I wasn't entirely sure that I could go on my own, but I really felt like I needed to go. And getting that book from you was like, I want to do this. And I just remember it was like, oh my God, like he wants to do this. Like this is the best thing I've ever received. So that's kind of interesting. To get back to escapism though, out of that little story, you don't feel like there was escapism there for you? It was more like you had a lot of fear around hurting yourself further?
Well, no. So then once, there was, the decision making was kind of like, wanting to go, feeling nervous about, going to Colombia and Ecuador and these kind of places, feeling nervous about what happens if my back has an issue. And like, I don't know how to get healed. Like there was some uncertainty between us. Like if coming traveling for that long together was going to be great. But then once we kind of made the decision to go, it really started to seem like, okay, this, especially like once I quit my job, and I was like starting to see like, oh, this kind of like freedom that's coming up in the future. Because I think that's one thing that's interesting is that when you've got your job, you're kind of like, it can feel very like scary to lose it. But once you quit, you're like, woof.
Yeah.
You completely lose like you have nothing to lose anymore. So you're like, oh, I just feel like way more relieved now. Even like working that exact same job.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting for me to compare. I mean, I've like quit a few jobs, I guess. And the difference that I felt between quitting my job, like my corporate job, and then moving to Lululemon was so different. Like the feelings, like, I don't really know how to describe it. Like Lululemon wasn't stressful and like weighing on me the same way working this corporate job was. So quitting was like sad for me. Like I was excited for the opportunity of something new and to be moving on. But at the same time, I was like, oh, I'm like sad to be leaving this job, which I think is really cool. Like that, I think that says something about a job, but I was like very ready to be done my corporate job. And I knew that.
Yeah. So we both weren't particularly enjoying the way our lives were. And when we both travel does kind of seem, especially going for a long period of time, it's like not immediately obvious how that would help you sort out your life at home. So I think it does kind of look like you're just running away. And instead of doing the thing where you take responsibility and you're like, oh, I'm not happy in my life here, I'm going to really take responsibility, sort these things out, improve my social circle, find a job I like, start doing things that are fulfilling.
It's so much easier though. Like, I'm just thinking about me in terms of saying no. Like, it's not that I don't, like, I'm still friends with most of the same people that I was friends with in Calgary, and I love those people to death, but I was very overwhelmed by how much like of my energy and time I was giving to them. And I really needed more time for me. And like, I physically wasn't as healthy as I am now. And I really like needed space and time to deal with that. And I really felt like I couldn't say no. I was really struggling with that aspect, and traveling gave me that no.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not gonna invite me like out for drinks on a Friday when I'm in Peru. Like, it's just not going to happen. And it having that space like gave me it gave me that practice of being like, no, I'm not there. Like, I'm not going to do this. And then when I found sort of this like happy balance away, then it was easier to continue that when I got back.
So you'd say that it was kind of escaping from problems that at some point you should deal with, but it's like valid to go out and do it that way. I guess like the thing, so
like you asked me a question instead of answering yourself.
Well, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that a lot of this comes from someone saying to you, someone who's close to you, saying you can't just keep running away from real life the entire time or something. I can't remember what the words were. Yeah,
I mean, I think that I've been told by like many people in different words, like you can't just spend your whole life traveling. Like you can't just do that. And I think even like it was something that was kind of put into my head when like I debated going, like taking a year off and traveling before university. And I mean, I've said this before on the podcast, and my reasoning for it was, I don't think I'll go to university if I take a year off, which is kind of funny. And I'm fine with the decisions that were made. My life has turned out, great with everything that's happened, but it's just interesting that that was my thought process at the time. But I don't know. I was kind of told, like, I feel like a lot of people put it in my head, professors, family members, friends, that this first trip we were taking for 6 months, it's like, okay, really enjoy that because like real life starts when you get home. And it's kind of this idea that like real life isn't enjoyable. Like, like working, not that great. Like working life, not that good. And I mean, I experienced that. And then I don't know. I feel like it's always been in my head, like doing these things. I'm like, no, like life should be good. Like we just get to live like one life. Like why should it not be good? Like I just don't get why we're doing these things that we don't like to do. I guess that's what I keep coming back to. And, I've talked to my dad about it, and he grew up in a completely different sort of family system than I did, and with different, I guess upbringing. And he's just like, you got to work for everything that you have. And I'm like, yeah, but like you only get to be young once. Like what's the point of like working yourself to death if you can, I don't know, do other things? Like he always jokes about, oh, you're in early retirement. And I work hard for everything that I'm doing right now. Like I do work very hard, but travel is really important to me because it gives me that space to see life in a different way, I think, is how I'd like to phrase that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I guess there's like a contrast between the kind of more conventional lifestyle, which would be spending this time, you've done university, you've done your like great trip, which is kind of like a more sanctioned activity to like go for like one trip, see the world, and then come back and get down to business. And you start a career and you start saving, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, whatever. You
work until you get your
divorced or something like that.
I don't know if that's something society encourages, but maybe it's in there.
But the second time you go, or when you save your money up, and instead of buying a house, you quit your job and go traveling, and then you do it again. And then that's when people are more like, oh, you should just be taking responsibility and dealing with your life instead of running away. Yeah,
definitely. And I think that...
do you think that is running away? Or do you think there's anything wrong with continuing to do that? Like, if you were to save your money, travel, save your money, travel, save your money, travel, over and over and over again.
So here's my thoughts on this. I think that I do think that travel is a form of escapism, but I don't necessarily think that it needs to be this negative thing. And that's what I want listeners to hear is like, I don't think that...
Well, and I think it's only... Sorry to interrupt, but
that's fine.
like things can be, you can use something to escape, but then you can also like integrate it back into your daily life. So like we were talking about in advance, like if you're going on this trip where you're just like partying and trying to avoid thinking about your day-to-day life as much as possible, versus spending time reading, spending time thinking, spending time journaling, and you're really like thinking about what you want in the long term.
Yeah. So I think there's different levels of like travel escapism. Like I think there is, and I think that we've experienced that as well. I mean, I went on a backpacking trip in 2008 with 2 girls that I lived with, and we were drunk for most of that trip. We were gone for 2 weeks and spent a lot of that time drunk. And we, you know, made this effort. We said, we're going to get up early every day and we're going to see the sights. And like, yeah, we did that. But you don't take things in the same way when you're hungover as you do when you're like in a clear mental state. Do I think that I got like any personal development or growth out of that? I mean, I went to Europe for the first time by myself. I stayed in hostels. I got lost in the middle of the night in Prague with a girlfriend. And I think that was kind of this realization of like, oh, you know, I'm in Europe and people don't know where I am. Like, I'm not as safe as I think I am in my like little bubble at home. So I think there's takeaways from it, but do I think that I like grew leaps and bounds? No. So there's that. And then there's the second trip we took where, I mean, we were young. We were like 21, 22, and we partied a lot. But it's also, we both kept journals. We both, you know, wrote things down. I feel like there was some growth out of that. And I feel like I can really see that in this list that I created of the things I wanted to come home and change. Like, I feel like I really saw a future for myself that was different from these travels. But then going to South America, it was like, you know, yes, we still had fun. Yes, we still went out and had drinks, but it was a lot more about like, let's like do a homestay and meet local people, and let's spend days where we just hang out in cafes and just, you know, journal, and let's spend like time on buses listening to podcasts and really doing some self-development. So I think there's all these different levels of travel as escapism. And I think it can be not so beneficial and you can kind of just escape, or you can escape in a really beneficial way. But the thing that I think is really important to remember is that, or to take away from it, is that people are escaping constantly. And I think that if somebody wants to be like, you're running away from your problems, I'm like, so are you. When you go out on Friday nights and you get blackout drunk, you're running away from your problems too. At least I'm doing it in a way that's, you know, it's different. It's better. Like, I mean, better is probably not the right word, but.
So do you feel frustrated when that kind of gets put onto traveling as being running away, but not considering the ways that people do it day to day?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think that there's people who look at me, they look at you, they look at other travelers, they see this lifestyle and they see, well, you're just avoiding the realities of life. You're avoiding these things that you need to do to be a productive citizen. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm going out there and I'm trying to be the best version of me that I can be. And I'm trying to find happiness within myself and not rely on material items to make me happy, and not rely on food to make me happy. And I'm not going out on the weekends and getting blackout drunk to forget about who I am, because I don't have any interest in doing that, because I like who I am. But in order to like who I am, I needed to go away to find out who I am. Does that make sense? I don't know. Like, it makes sense in my mind, but I'm not sure if it's like communicated clearly.
I can definitely see that you're like the point you're making about the kind of conventional pathways, like find a job that's satisfactory, save money. I repeated this like series of events over, but something that's hard about it is if you're not like really choosing to be there and you're kind of just like doing it out of momentum. So like if you're...
Do you mean while traveling?
No, just like doing this thing, like you went to university, maybe you like took a long trip, you came home, you're like, okay, real life, like we were, and then you get a job. You don't really think about what job you want. You just get one that kind of applies to your degree. Mm-hmm. You've never really like thought about okay, I want to go over there and do this thing with my life. And you're kind of just like being pushed along with the momentum of your previous choices that you never really made. You know, your parents did X thing, so you took X degree, you had X degree, so you got X job. And then if you're not really like saying like, yes, this is what I want to be doing, you do find all of these ways to kind of escape from that. And it's like exactly like the life we were kind of living for 2 years, where it's going out, drinking on weekends, it's spending your money on food and on things and watching TV, and like instead of having good, interesting conversations and being really like present, we're just kind of the time we're not at work. It's like we're just trying to avoid like dealing with the realities of life by like movies and books and TV and drinking and things like that.
Yeah. And I think like shopping for me was a huge thing. Like, it's like, oh, I'm sad. I think like maybe I'd feel better if I bought this new dress for myself, because then like I'll feel really pretty in it. And it's almost like this, like it's masking what's actually there. It's like, oh, I feel sad because I don't like my job and I don't like my current situation. And I feel kind of like, I don't know, almost like ashamed or cowardly that I like am not like that. I'm too scared to change it. But if I just buy this dress, I'll look really pretty at work, or I'll look really pretty on the weekend, and then I'll feel better. Like kind of like look good, feel good, which like works to a certain extent, like kind of the way a Band-Aid does. It's not actually like healing you or actually making it better. It's kind of just like covering up the problem.
Yeah, you get this, like what you're experiencing is a more like deeper sense of unfulfillment, or you're not like completely satisfied with life, and you get this like momentary burst of satisfaction which kind of masks it, and it's kind of like that escape like that you get when you eat something tasty like a dessert or a bag of chips, and you're like, ooh, this is nice, and
like,
it kind of eases,
like a ginger snap cookie filled with delicious cream cheese icing.
And it like eases this like uncertainty you have about bigger issues.
I think probably like most people out there can kind of relate to this feeling of being really stressed, and you have a glass of wine or you have a beer, and like that first, you can feel it in your body. You just feel the relaxation come over you. Like it's warm, it's fuzzy. It feels good. I'm not going to lie. I just imagined it. It feels great. Like there's like nothing bad about that feeling. Like it feels really good. And, that's why people do these things, because you all of a sudden you start to relax. It's like, okay, maybe my job's not that bad. Maybe my love life's not that bad. Maybe, my parents aren't such dicks. It's like, I don't know, life seems like better when you've got this sort of like blurred vision from alcohol, or, drugs the same way. People use drugs in that way as well.
Model of
people use sugar that way. People use junk food, fast food, health food even, I feel like can be to a certain extent. I think there's all levels of escapism. So
what is it about travel that makes it I guess, are we arguing that it's a better thing to do?
I'm going to go ahead and argue that I think it's a better thing to do. I'm going to put myself out there. Send me an email if you disagree.
It'd be weird if you didn't think it was a better thing to do.
So I think that there is the ability to change your life while you're at home. I think you've got to be like a really strong person to do it though. And I think in most cases, it probably takes a move to a new city, or to like literally cut all your friends out of your life, cut your family out, which is really, really hard to do in most cases, unless you really don't like those people. I think the reason why travel is a better form of escapism is because it gives you that space. It gives you that space without you needing to be like, guys, in my life, I'm going through some stuff. I really need to like take a break from everyone and my job. Travel is that break. It gives you that space to be like, I just need to like breathe in peace for a second. Does that make sense to you? Like it's kind of this, I think you could get it at home. And I'm sure there are people who would argue with, what we're saying, that like, no, I've, changed my life at home. Okay. Yes, you probably have. And that's amazing if you have, because you're a much stronger person than I am. I was struggling so hard with saying no. And I was struggling with the idea of quitting my job because I felt like, you know, people would look down on me. And I've said so many times that I don't know, had we moved back to Calgary instead of Canmore, I don't know if I could have got a job at Lululemon and been happy working in retail when I felt like there was this expectation on me to be something more than an educator at Lululemon. Whereas like when I got to Canmore, it's just like nobody has any expectations of me. They're like, yeah, cool. You want to work here? Like, that's sweet. Yeah. You like yoga, you like fitness. Cool. Yeah. You're hired. Like, you seem smart. You seem nice. Like, you can work here. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, but that would have been really hard for me in Calgary because there's sort of this like label on me in Calgary as smart. Like, successful.
What do you mean there's a label on you in Calgary?
Like,
do you mean you feel like you feel like more competitive in a way?
Okay, yes, I'll take that. Because that's not
like
the way I want to describe it.
Losing or something.
I guess so. Like, yeah, there's a certain part of me that's like, I need to like keep up with the Joneses in the city. Whereas like, I was like, I don't need to keep up with anyone in the mountains. I don't know. It's weird.
But even there, like, I remember we had this conversation before we moved to Canmore. We were thinking about going to try to teach English in China, or I remember being in Queenstown, New Zealand, and being like, oh, we could just get jobs here and live here.
It's funny because it's like still on the radar, like that's 4 years later.
We're coming.
Queenstown, we're coming for you. I'm going to work at Lululemon.
But I remember thinking like, yeah, working like a job in a cafe or whatever is like, I would feel better about it if I was in like a foreign country, and being 1 hour away from where I went to university and where I went to work for a couple years, and then being in a cafe is kind of like, it does give you that feeling of, even though I know, like when I think about it, I write about it, I'm like, this is ridiculous, but you still feel like other people are going to perceive you as a failure in some small way. And I get that feeling like when I was working at a cafe and you'd see someone you knew walk in the door and you're like, oh, you get a bit of nervousness. But then you're like,
I like how yours was like, oh, and mine was like, I stop breathing for a second and have a moment of terror of like, what excuse can I make to go downstairs and fold pants for the next half an hour while they shop around so I don't have to have this reaction or have this interaction. And that's like, that wasn't people who knew me very well, but I'm thinking of one particular instance where a couple girls who I haven't seen since university and I didn't really know, they just were doing business degrees as well. We met over like a U of C 101, like orientation in first year. And I mean, my hair is in like a messy bun on top of my head. I'm wearing no makeup and I'm just like doing my thing at Lulu. Like, I don't know. It's just like what I did and I was happy doing it. But then I saw these girls walk in and they have these like successful accounting jobs in the city and like, you know, they're kind of like dressed to impress. And I had this moment where it's like, you know, my heart's like in my throat and I kind of feel sick and I'm just like, maybe they won't recognize me. And then the one girl is like, Amanda, like, you work here? You live here? And it's that moment where I'm like, yeah, like I moved here, you know, X amount of time ago. And then it's like, oh, how do you like working here? And it's like, oh, I love it. I love living out here. And they're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I've always thought this would be like a cool place to live. And you realize that what you're doing is not that crazy. It's just that there's a lot of fear from other people around it as well to do that, I think. Does that make sense? I don't know if you've experienced
that.
Yeah,
it's weird because on one level you're like, okay, I don't want to like play this game. I want to search for like satisfaction that comes from me personally being satisfied with my life, not everyone around me thinking I'm doing well.
Yeah, and
but on this, you can snap back into that mindset of like, oh, I'm losing the game.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's better to like not be on the board at all, but it's hard at times. And I think I'm not saying that every single person looked at me like living in Canmore and working at Lululemon and was like, I want her life. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that, you know, I kind of had these fears that people were going to sort of look down on me. And it was every single time it was like, oh, it's really cool that you're doing this. And with travel, a lot of times I've heard from people like, oh, I wish I could do that. I'm kind of like, you could do that. You just need to make the choice. And I don't think of myself as like some person who's super brave or courageous. I just feel like for me, it's like, I don't know. I just refuse to like live unhappy. That's just all it is for me. I guess if that.
But it's not that simple, is it?
It isn't. It isn't.
But like, what do you, like, you obviously go through ups and downs.
Totally. I mean, am I happy? Yes. Am I happy every single moment of every single day? No. I have moments where I'm like confused and frustrated and tired, and it seems easier to just be working in a city, some job that pays me where I could take off, you know, X amount of time in a year and get paid for it. And if somebody could just tell me what to do, because working for yourself, nobody tells you what to do. You tell yourself what to do. And sometimes it's kind of exhausting when you don't know what to do. But at the end of the day, it's way better. I think that's what that comes down to. But it's one of those things where it's like, is it easy to recognize that you're unhappy? I don't know. Like sometimes I feel like you can get so caught up in just day to day. It just becomes so normal. And I know we talked about this, I think like 2 episodes ago, like normalizing travel. And I feel like normalizing life is a real thing.
Yeah.
You know, your shitty boss or your shitty job or your average coworkers who talk about their stupid love life all the time, they just become normal to you. They stop being, I don't know, anything more than just what your day-to-day life looks like. It just becomes, you know, this routine where you come home and you turn on the TV. You don't even like think about why you're doing it. It's not like this conscious, like, oh, I had like a shitty day at my average job. I'm going to turn on the TV and escape from it now. Like pour myself some wine, open up a beer and do it. So it's like
you feel like your perspective changes, like almost like you are like zoomed in and you're like not really aware as much as you used to be. Like you're not aware that you're doing the things you're doing to escape thinking about this dissatisfaction. You're just doing them.
Yeah. And I think that's what happened to me. But I think that there was always this part of me that was like, I've tasted something better, because I knew that like travel life was better. Like I've tasted something better, and it's still kind of there, like kind of sitting on the sidelines, like being like, remember me? Like I was really great. But it's like really like
feeling kind of like alive.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think about people who haven't had the experience that I've had of like being away and traveling long term. And I feel like for them, it is like work life, just normal. Like why would they want to get away in the form of travel if they've never experienced what it's like before? You know? Yeah.
There's like nothing to compare it to. And I think that I can definitely relate to that in going the second time. And it took like kind of a month before I was like, oh, like this is what it feels like to be experiencing like, I don't know, happiness, like contentment with life, instead of just like feeling like, oh, life is just like really burdensome.
Yeah. Your life can feel like really heavy when you're just kind of in it. And it's like, when you get out of it, it's like, I don't know, it's like shedding all this like extra weight or this extra baggage and just being like, whoa, I'm like light and free and dancing around. And this is like really happy and joyful.
Yeah. And so you'd say that kind of running away, like when you do feel like burdened and you feel this, especially like once you've gone traveling one time, and then I know when we came back after the second time, it started to feel like you get these moments where things start to feel like a burden and you're like, okay, I want to leave. Mm-hmm. How do you balance out the urge to like run away and to escape with taking responsibility and being like, okay, there are people I can talk to, like as in like if somebody's bothering you at work, you can talk to that person instead of quitting. If there's like people in your social circle, you can start a new social circle without moving, stuff like that. How do you balance up that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I feel like you could kind of get into this, like, I don't know, this situation where you're like never really happy somewhere. And I think that finding contentment in a day-to-day sort of like quote unquote normal life is important. And I feel like you know, that's sort of my goal now, is like travel gives me this space to really find out what I want out of life. And then when I come home or I come back or I settle somewhere, it's like taking these things I've learned and applying them day to day. And I mean, we talked about it kind of in the episode about keeping travel alive when you're at home. I mean, it can be hard. Like sometimes, and I know like even when I worked for Lulu and I lived in Canmore, which is like one of the most spectacular places in the world, I'm pretty sure, it's easy to like forget that you're there. It's easy to get bogged down by, you know, stretchy pant drama. It's easy to get caught up in this little world that's just yours. I think remembering, like kind of like having this perspective, like being like, oh wow, I'm really like bogged down by what he or she said, or feeling really like kind of trapped, or, you know, whatever the feeling is. It's kind of like remembering that there's this other perspective. And I think something that's cool about travel is that it gives you a perspective on how other people live and other cultures. And I know for me, it's giving me like a lot of, I don't know, gratitude for where I come from. And, you know, until I was like well into my teens and even into my 20s, I feel like I didn't even know that there was people who like grew up without televisions, and there's people who like, you know, didn't have the internet, and it's like, oh wait, your parents like can't afford to buy you a Christmas present, like that's weird. And it's, you see these things that other people live with, and conditions that other people live in. And I think that's like a really good reminder, is like, oh right, my life isn't so bad, like my life's actually kind of great. And then it kind of like shifts your perspective into like, wait, why am I upset about what this person said? Like, it doesn't even matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of feel like I lost the train of the thought.
I was kind of trying to follow a path, but I don't know if I like hopped onto a little side trail there. I think perspective shift is like finding a way to shift your perspective. And
so you mean like, so the person who's like been traveling and like, or when you're have the urge to like move, go travel, what do you mean perspective shift?
Ooh, okay. I gotcha. I didn't really answer that part of your question. So you're asking when it's like feeling really bogged down by something at home, how do you like fight the urge to like not run away?
Yeah, or if you have the idea in your head that like, oh, I just need to be more responsible for my problems and like solve this, like running away isn't gonna help.
I mean, I think it depends on the situation. I don't think there's like one hard thing that somebody can do. I think in some cases going away, even if you go away for like a couple weeks or a month, can be really good to give new light on your situation. Journaling, I think, is a great practice that everyone should do. I mean, I strongly believe that journaling is one of the best ways to, I don't know, get clarity on the way that you're feeling. What would you say?
So I've had like, the question really came from like personal experience of feeling like we moved in Canmore, we were there a few months, life kind of started getting more like routine, and, you know, some things got kind of grinding, and I was like, okay, like I want to go traveling again.
Like, I'm kind of done. I want to like get out. Are you insinuating that there's something wrong with that?
Well, yeah. So then in my head, sometimes I'm like, if I was really being like completely self-responsible, I'd say like, there are things I can do here to change my situation, to make it something that I want to enjoy, and to solve these problems that are kind of irritating me, instead of looking for the option of just avoiding them.
Yeah.
So I think that it's hard to like think about that balance sometimes, but it seems like even if you're just like you can convince yourself of like, oh, I have to solve these gigantic, monumental problems that seem so important. And then when you like walk away from them for a while, you're like, oh wow, that's actually completely irrelevant. It's like as if you were trying to like break down this gigantic wall with a sledgehammer, and then you like step back and you're like, okay, there's actually like a path over there. I'm just going to walk around it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what life can kind of be like at home sometimes. When you're working every day and you're like, just kind of, your head's kind of down and you're just like plowing ahead, and then you can go traveling and you get some better perspective on it. Just like physically moving to a different location is good perspective change. And I know for me, going on like a month trip was like a really good thing, which obviously everyone can't do.
Can't they? I mean, even to like just going away in general, like you don't have to travel across the world, I don't think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in like when you're encountered with the problem, it's so often you feel like you have to do things to like resolve that problem. Like, I've got a lot on my to-do list. I got to keep doing stuff. And like sometimes when you just stop doing things and then you're like, okay, I'm actually like not doing anything. I'm just like so eager to do something that I'm like spinning my wheels. And when I stop doing everything, then I feel better.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that as something that I've related to, like in my, I guess, sort of like work or career life, where it's like feeling so bogged down by all the stuff I've got to do and kind of having like a bunch of tabs open on my computer and like trying to, you know, compose a bunch of emails in one go. And it's like, if you just stop and take a breath and walk away from it for a second and kind of like compose your thoughts and come back, you're so much more productive. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's kind of the same idea if you've got like a bunch of stuff on your mind. You know, people are like, I'm too busy. I can't take a vacation right now. I can't get away. And it's like, well, you'd probably feel better if you did. Like, just clear your mind, you know?
Yeah, it's those moments where you feel like you can't stop that you might actually need to stop. But I think that, at least from my life experience, when that urge to like get away and escape has come up, like, obviously I don't respond to that every time, but doing it has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, I would completely agree to that.
And I think that like it kind of speaks to when you're away, not trying, like, I guess if you're like away on your trip, like we were the first time we were traveling, and it's just like, I'm just gonna, even the second time for like the majority of it, like I'm just not even going to think about what's happening at the end of this trip. I'm going to like try to force it out of my memory and try to be,
just like pretend like it's not happening.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the mindset that isn't that. I don't know. I was going to say the word healthy. I feel like it's
the word that came to my mind was helpful.
Yeah, it's definitely not constructive.
I think though it's interesting because so that's sort of the same like mindset as like, it's Friday, I'm done the week, like I'm going to go get drunk. And I feel like there's something like more unhealthy about that than actually like going somewhere. And I mean, there's people out there that might disagree with me, and that's fine. I think just from my experiences, I've lived both. I've like been a weekend warrior. I've, hated Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, or, whatever days, I guess maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. And something about being away where I was like, oh, like every single day of the week is great. Like, I don't want to hate certain days because of like no real reason, you know what I mean? Other than not really like loving your job. Like, I just don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I hear a lot that like, well, like that's what you do. I'm like, or it's not. I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like, I don't know what it is. It's like fear or societal pressure or a combination, or I mean, maybe money for a lot of people. But I feel like people kind of get it in their head. Like, I just got to do this. I got to just do this grind. Like, that's what I do. And in my mind, I'm just like, you don't have to do that. But I feel like traveling has really given me the ability to see that I don't have to do that. Like, I think had I not traveled, that perspective would be a lot different and harder for me to see. So that's why I think that travel is like a better form of escapism, because you escape away from what you know as being normal and you see a new normal through, hundreds of different people who have a completely different normal than you do. And they come from different cultures and backgrounds and they're living different lives. Like, I feel like traveling the first time was kind of the first real time where I met people who were like, it's like, oh, I'm like a traveling musician. And I'm like, what? Is that like a thing? It's like, yeah, I just go around and I busk for money. And I was like, what? That's not like a career. Like, that's not something you do with your life, because that's not like the, how I was raised and the society that I'm a part of at home is. Or you see these people who are, studying all these cool things in school. And I'm like, but what are you going to do with that? And they're like, I don't know. I'm just going to figure it out. I'm like, but what about the plan? What about like the life plan? And they're like, I don't have one. I'll just figure it out. And I don't know. I feel like that first time going away was the first time where I really like saw these other things as options outside of what I known. And I think that really shifted my ability to see that there are other possibilities than what I thought was like quote unquote life.
So you think that travel is a really useful, or at least can be a really useful form of escape, because it really like helps you, gives you the opportunity to integrate things back into your life, into your long term. So instead of this like going out on a Friday night, getting really drunk, waking up feeling hungover kind of escape, where you kind of escape and then you're back and you don't really consider what happened. Travel is a good form of escape because you shift your perspective, you get a wider view, you get time to think, and then when you come back, you've kind of integrated this into your kind of long term.
Yes, definitely. That's like exactly what I was trying to get across.
Yeah, I think that applies to kind of, it makes me think about like what we talked about in like ayahuasca episode with psychedelics, a bit how like people view these things as like maybe bad drugs I'm speaking of, but it's really like what you bring to it yourself. And obviously things have better or worse characteristics, but if you come to these short-term experiences with the mind to a long-term change, it can be really helpful and constructive.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's kind of like the same, I guess, thought patterns. Do you have any other thoughts on travel as escapism?
The only thing I'd kind of like to add at the end is just that I feel like in the past, I've been in this mindset where I'm like, I just need to do more. Like, I don't need to run away. Like, I need to face up to my problems. I need to take responsibility for this. I need to change things. I can't keep running away my entire life. But the biggest moments of personal growth and change have been those moments where we've gone away and I've had time to think and to breathe and like space to be like space to just kind of connect with what I want and not what everyone around me wants. Yeah. So I think that the thing is just like, if maybe as someone listening, you're kind of in this position where you're feeling like really burdened down by life and you feel like you just need to be stronger. You just need to do more. And that even though this idea of traveling is exciting, you feel like it's running away and that you shouldn't be doing it. I just think that from my personal experience, it's been stepping away from everything and having that moment the time and the space to breathe has been really constructive and helpful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just what you said just kind of brought up one more point that I was thinking of, as I feel like in the times where I haven't been traveling or I haven't been like conscious of what exactly I wanted out of life, I guess, it's kind of always been this like, I don't know, like, you know, if I save up and I buy this like fancy pair of boots, like I'll feel really good. Or if I go to the gym lots and I don't know, lose 5 pounds, like I'll feel really good. There's sort of like always grasping for, I guess, like sort of tangible or measurable things that I thought would make me happy. And something that I've learned is that it's not really just if we use like the weight things. It's like, I'm going to be happy if I can fit into X size and weigh X pounds. And then you get there and you don't feel happy and you feel confused. And you're like, well, maybe I just need to like lose more and be a size smaller. And it's kind of this like dangerous cycle to get into because you could get too skinny and be really unhealthy. But outside of that actual physical element of it, it's this very unhealthy pattern because it's seeking happiness in a way that's not really making you happy, I guess. So I think for me, it's when I've traveled, I've had the distance to be able to see that and be like, okay, like I'm good enough just as I am. You know, I don't need to buy this thing or change something about my body to have more self-worth. I just need to, you know, figure out what's actually going to make me happy. And traveling's giving me that space and that time to like figure those things out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a quote about addiction that it's hard to get enough of something that almost works. And I think that really applies to that. Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people could argue that, you know, travel is a form of addiction. And I probably wouldn't disagree with that because once you've traveled, you kind of just want more of it. And it takes, you know, going to a more challenging country or going for a longer period of time to kind of get that same high again. So it's definitely sort of an addiction in that way. I guess the way that I think about it is like, you know, people are looking to escape in a lot of different forms. So pick your poison. I feel like, you know, travel is the most productive and I think like helpful form of poison, I guess. Poison's the wrong word with that, but I'm just going to continue that metaphor. I don't feel like it's a poison.
I'm not very good at metaphors. I like to think I am though. Anyways, do you have anything else?
So would you say you're like a fish out of water when it comes to metaphors?
No. I'm like a fish with my belly out of the water, but not my gills because I'm still breathing. I'm just going to stop this. If you would like to continue the discussion of travel as a form of escapism, or if you have an opinion or a thought, please reach out to us, www.theworldwanders.com, or send us
on Facebook.
Okay, or on Facebook, The World Wanders, or send us an email, info@theworldwanders.com. On our website, you can sign up for our newsletter and get a free copy of our really cool book that we have out called The Ultimate Guide for South America. It's going to be free for a limited period of time, so sign up for that and get that while it's still free. It's pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. And as always, thanks for listening.
Thank you.